Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Impact Wrestling Slammiversary post-show. I am John Pollock, and tonight I am joined by not one, but two guests. First up, he was the man behind the watch-along tonight over on the Up Next YouTube channel. You're also very familiar with his weekly Impact reports here at postwrestling.com. He is the surprise entrant on this post-show, Davie Portman.
Hello. Guys, how are we doing today?
Well, we are not joined by just Davie tonight because we could not be recapping Slammiversary without the man who, whether you would want to pay every Wednesday night to hear him talk, the man who spikes the ratings, the destination of America, the man that will get a pop out of your TV that we're all in pursuit of tonight. He is giving you that access. Nate Milton is with us.
John, I don't know what to think right now. You know, I thought it was just going to be you and me doing this show like always, and then I see Davie Portman is the mystery guest, and I got to tell you, I was so mad I got up and I threw my liquor against the wall. I don't know what I'm going to do the rest of the night, but yeah, this is cool because this is kind of, John, when you think about it, this is like, you know, Slammiversary is all about bringing together different generations of TNA or Impact or, God forbid, Global Force, but on this show, we've got you, we've got me, and we've got Davie. It's like the past, present, and future of Impact reviews. And so I'm looking forward to the conversation, gentlemen.
Yeah, I thought 5 would be way too many. I thought 3 is max. That's what we're going to do.
Are we going to announce that it's an elimination at the last minute and I'll just like leave halfway through, or what's going on here?
Yeah, I'm going to be looking out in case one of you goes after my ankle or Davie hits the fold on somebody. We will hopefully make our way through to the end of it. And I always find, like, given that Impact Wrestling, it's not like they run monthly pay-per-views. So whenever we do one of these shows, it's, you know, for a quarterly pay-per-view, and it's usually like an update on where Impact Wrestling stands. And that it's always curious to look at the day of a pay-per-view, what that interest level is. And this was one where Impact leaned in heavily just towards buy this pay-per-view because we got a lot of surprises. And that was the main event of the show more than any of the matches. I'll start with you, Davie. Like, you've been consistently watching Impact for the last number of months and doing the reports. Today, how much interest did you have in this card, and did you sense a lot of interest online for Slammiversary?
I genuinely was really looking forward to this show. I've mentioned in my reports before and on the podcast that I am not someone who watched TNA back in the day, like when it was at its height. I've never really watched TNA, and I'm probably one of the only people that started watching wrestling during the pandemic. So I pretty much started these reports just before COVID hit and just before they went to Empty Arena. And actually, I've quite been enjoying the product. And then I think they've had some great wrestling on there. I've loved the women's division in Impact. And then with the intrigue of these mystery guests turning up tonight, I was pretty I had high expectations for this show, and pretty much just 2 hours before the show went on air, I decided, why not do a watch-along? I knew John Cena, who's joined us for a bunch of the watch-alongs, was going to be watching it as well. So we figured very last minute to put one on, and the room was really popular. So it actually showed that there was interest in the show tonight. Now, some of them were tuning in just so they didn't want to pay, and they just wanted to hear us tell them what was happening and who's shown up. But there were actually people in the room as well who said, I bought this show because I wanted to see who turns up. So I think from whether or not they delivered on the actual night, I think from a promotional point of view, I think Impact did a pretty good job for this show.
How about you, Nate? How much Impact have you been keeping up with during the pandemic, or were you kind of just dropping in for this pay-per-view?
I've been kind of popping in and out with Impact during the past 3 months or so, just because, like, wrestling, as much as I love it and I love to talk about it, wrestling has kind of slipped on my list of priorities, just given what's going on in this crazy alternate timeline of a reality that we're dealing with in America right now. But Impact has been good, to Davie's point. And you could make the argument that Impact has been really solid for the better part of the last 2 years, maybe even more than that. And the days of, Impact being the butt of a joke, or, the LOL TNA days, like, I think that's in the past. The problem is, while you've got people who are interested, and I talked to a lot of people this week that were like, what are they going to do with the title situation? Now that Tessa's out of the picture, who's going to be the people that show up? Is EC3 coming back? Things of that nature. So there's interest, but they haven't found a way to turn that interest into profit. Not yet. And I think, just the numbers that Davie talked about for the watch along is evidence to that, because out of the 10 people I talked to this week about Slammiversary, I would be surprised if more than 2 of them actually plunked down money to watch this show, John.
Yeah, for me, for the longest time, I think Impact, really you can go back to when they finally moved to Pursuit and in the US, and, you had to follow them, whether it be on Twitch or just some of these outlets. And I don't think it's really changed all that much moving to Access, is that, for a time period, Impact was kind of that alternative and took up a lot of that space. If you were someone that was going to watch non-WWE wrestling, Impact was a viable option. Now the options are just so vast. We have access to so much wrestling that Impact, they're just struggling, I think, to keep up with all the competition that's out there. And, wrestling fans only have so much time. And I think that's where Impact just becomes a victim of, they're my 4th or 5th promotion I'm going to prioritize, and there's going to be weeks I don't catch it. So it's trying to just stay relevant in the everyday conversation. So I think Impact, they tried to make a big promotion out of the surprises to try and just grab interest tonight. So I did see tonight as an important show just to try and grab back some lapsed fans, and whether it be just curiosity tonight or just tuning in on Tuesday, I think that was the goal of tonight, Davie.
Yes, absolutely. And it's the problem is whether after the actual show itself they turned off people or not, which I'm sure we'll get into. But I know from the room, I think the majority on the YouTube felt disappointed after it, and were kind of maybe cheesed that they took their money tonight.
Well, let's recap that throughout all of this promotion and the videos they've been running. I mean, the former TNA stars that they have been like dangling in front of you. Like, this wasn't just letting people's minds wander. They literally threw out teases of Kurt Angle, of Sting, and that's naturally going to set people's expectations. The tagline was, "Our world changes forever." So you can't really set the bar much higher than "Our world changes forever" tonight. So watch out when Impact Wrestling and Heath Slater collide on July the 18th.
I mean, to be fair, John, like, we didn't get Sting, but we did get Showtime tonight. So they weren't lying to us.
Yeah, with almost like this like very bizarre mask as well. That we'll get into some of the wardrobe choices. Let
me ask you though, John, and you too, Davie, because that's something that I talked to with a friend this week about. In terms of this surprise, was there anybody that could have lived up to the expectations that were raised given these vignettes over the past month or so? Because honestly, outside, like, EC3 would have been fine. What we got, it was okay. Like, honestly, I would have loved to have seen Monty Brown, but I didn't think that was going to happen. But was there anybody outside of somebody like a Kurt or a Sting that could have lived up to the hype that they were generating?
I feel the best thing would be to not promote whoever it is you're going to have show up. Like, tease some of, like, your Kurt Hawkins, your Zack Ryders, and then deliver an EC3. And you're like, oh, okay. But the fact everyone was so heavily teased, and as John said, Kurt Angle, Sting, and you're not getting that. And something I felt was, I feel it would have been a bigger reaction if all these signings kind of came as a unit. Like, if you did an invasion angle with these these old guys together, okay, these are these are maybe your C-level guys, but you team them together and bring them in as one unit to end the show and do a big angle, they kind of bump themselves up to a B+ or an A level. Whereas scattering them out throughout the show, you're like, oh, cool, we've got Heath Slater. Oh, the Good Brothers. Well, that was announced a couple of weeks ago they were coming here. And EC3, well, we kind of thought it would be him anyway.
I really thought... sorry, go ahead, Davie.
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to reiterate. I think it would have had more of an impact if they were one unit coming together at the end. I think people would have been left a bit more buzzing off of that.
So they did reveal ahead of time Anderson and Gallows with the interview they did last night, and flat out stating we're going to be on the pay-per-view, which I didn't think was a bad move to just at least say, hey, we're going to be there, get that final 24-hour buzz going into the show. And after I heard that, and their interview as well, where, you know, they said they've signed a 2-year deal with Impact, and, you know, they said once we can travel, we're going to be going to New Japan. That made me think that the absolute best you could pull out of your hat for a big angle on Sunday, and a lot of this would be contingent on Impact being able to thaw what's been a very frozen relationship with New Japan, to be able to go to New Japan and say, hey, none of your guys can travel right now. Let us use all your US Bullet Club guys that come with Anderson and Gallows, and they show up, your Kentas, your Gorillas of Destiny. You can't use them right now. We can give them some paydays for a couple of months until they can travel over there. Anderson and Gallows are going to be in New Japan again, and Impact gets to utilize the Bullet Club for a couple of months while they're handicapped and can't go to Japan. I thought that was literally the best option you could pull out of your hat in terms of surprising people with a big angle of what's out there, because free agents, it's not like there's this depth of free agents out there that you can bring in that can be those game changers. Like even a Sting or a Kurt Angle, it's very questionable physically what they can do now other than a one-off here or there. So I don't know how deep the options were to begin with.
Well, damn. Now I wish I would have paid $40 for that damn show, because that sounds a hell of a lot more intriguing than what we got, John Pollock. And it's an idea that, yes, it does depend on mending fences that have been broken over the years, but
that's a big hurdle.
Yeah. But if they were able to pull that off, like that's something that actually has legs and something that would actually live up to the hype that you generated.
And that's something that John Cena was saying in the group as well. He was suggesting that Kenta could be that mystery man, and essentially saying, John, what you said, have a kind of Bullet Club going on in the US. Mm-hmm. And that would even, you can pitch that to New Japan as, hey, you've just had Evil become your champion. You'll eventually have Kenta and Jay White back, and you can have that kind of battle for who is the leader, because you got a world champion in the US, you got your world champion in Japan, and then your leader. But yeah, it was the better show in the parallel universe that we could have got.
So let's dive into this pay-per-view happening from the beautiful Skyway Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. And I've kind of been conflicted on this, because watching the TV and tonight's pay-per-view, like the biggest hurdle for them, I thought, was like the atmosphere for these matches. You could certainly say, like, of all the companies that are running empty arena shows right now, this is the toughest, just because they aren't putting people in the crowds. And I can't fault them at the same time for that. I think this is a safer measure that they're not going to that extent. So I feel bad critiquing that, but it is pretty jarring, I would say, Nate, when you're watching these matches, and it's been the case on TV for all of these empty studio shows, that it's just so quiet.
Right. Like, as a human being, I appreciate what they're doing in terms of trying to be a little bit more cautious than the other competitors out there. But from just the viewing standpoint and the experience of watching a show, especially a show that's supposed to be the kickoff to a lot of big stories, I felt like the energy just wasn't there, especially when you talk about, the Moose match, which we'll get into. And like, when you got a guy like Dreamer, who at this point, John, I hate to say it, I don't want to disparage the good name of Tommy Dreamer, but at this point, like 80% of Dreamer is crowd reactions. And without a crowd, it kind of kills whatever mystique was there. So yeah, that's one thing that in general has kind of dampened my interest in wrestling over the past few months is, you either have no crowd or you have a crowd full of employees, and it's not the same thing. Granted, it shouldn't be the same thing right now, because if you want to be real about it, Davey, like, we probably shouldn't have even been watching a show tonight, given what's going on in America and given the lack of awareness when it comes to battling this disease, battling this virus. But here we are. And so just judging as a viewer, it does lessen my enjoyment of the product.
Oh, 100%. And one of my questions going into it was how much of this is like an Impact decision, or bear in mind, this is in Nashville, this is in Tennessee, this isn't in Florida, where it seems to be anything goes. Like, go to Disney, go to a wrestling show, like, do whatever. Like, I don't know if, John, and you may know better, is this an actual Impact decision? Or is it just because of where they're recording? There might be different laws in place there.
Well, I don't know specifically what kind of measures Impact is subjected to, but Tennessee is where NASCAR just held their race on Wednesday and had something like 22,000 people attend in the stands. So
okay.
I don't know if Tennessee is necessarily clamping down too much if they're having 22,000 people attend a NASCAR All-Star race as of a few days ago. So
yeah, I'd say this was either a Skyway Studios thing or an Impact thing, just because given kind of the attitudes of a lot of governors in the South, and granted I live in the South, but a lot of the governors have had conflicting responses, to be fair, or to be nice about it, to this pandemic. And so, yeah, like, Tennessee is not where I would go. No disrespect to any listeners in Tennessee, but that's not where I'm going to feel safe right now.
Fair enough. I would also say that their roster isn't the size of an AEW or WWE. So, whereas, I mean, not that they're full audiences, but Impact, you'll have the Dinas and a couple of other guys at ringside. It might even sound worse if you've just got 15, 20 people there.
You can only rely on so many cutaways to Johnny Swinger.
Exactly.
Trying to start chants. It would be a little tough. And again, it's tough atmosphere wise, but I'm not going to be overly critical about that decision at the same time. So Josh Matthews was calling the show with Don Callis. It's been Josh Matthews and Madison Rayne throughout all the TV leading into this. And we kick things off with Dez and Wentz coming out for their open challenge, and it is answered by the returning Motor City Machine Guns, Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin. Chris Sabin in his first match since January of 2019 after he suffered a torn ACL, I believe the third of his career after he had those back-to-back ACL tears during his TNA days. The match begins, and Dez and Wentz just take turns landing the Senton Atomicos onto Sabin in their corner. Sabin comes back. He lays out both on the floor after these kicks from the apron. They're double teaming Wentz and just all the signature double team spots by the Motor City Machine Guns. And these two, I mean, they have not teamed in years at this point, but I mean, right back to their regular chemistry. Dez gets a hot tag and he's just running wild here. Moments later, they take over. They're double teaming Dez and they go through a series of near falls. There's the tackle breakup spot, which we got several times throughout tonight. And then the Machine Guns, hit their finish and pin Dez at 14 minutes, 48 seconds. And we'll start with you on this one, Nate. Your thoughts on the return of the Machine Guns and, this opener that I think started the show off pretty well.
This made me so happy, John. Like, if the emotion that I felt at the beginning of the show were the same emotions that I felt once we got our final reveal of the night, I think this would be one of my favorite pay-per-views of the year. Just because I've always been a fan of the Motor City Machine Guns. I think that they were criminally underutilized during their first run in Impact. And so to see them come back and see them reunite was just cool on its face. But then you put them in there with the Rascals, right? And these are, if you could theoretically pick any team that would be, kind of this dream match for the Motor City Machine Guns, it would be somebody like the Rascals. And so to see them in there with these guys just kicked off things with a bang for me. I enjoyed the match. This set the bar pretty high for me to start the show. Like, I was in a really, really good mood after this match, and I was ready to receive the rest of my Christmas presents, the Christmas in July presents that Impact was ready to give us tonight.
Davie, your thoughts on the return of the machine guns, how they can fit into the tag division? Because you certainly come out of this like this was far from a one-off, and we'll talk about that later, what they've set up for Tuesday.
I really loved it. I think the fact that these guys haven't seemed to have been teased either, this was a genuine pleasant surprise, and kick off the show right away, get some of these mystery people out. I thought it was great. The match was great. I've loved the Rascals. I'm very high up on the North, and I think the problem is with the Impact Tag Division is they just stand like so many tiers above everyone else. And I put the Rascals kind of second in that tag division. I think, especially in recent weeks with certain stories going on, Wentz especially, as well as Trey, obviously, but have really come out of their shells a lot more and shown other sides of themselves. So I think these were great opponents for Motor City Machine Guns, and the tag division desperately needs more people in there. I love the likes of TJP and Fallah Bahh as a tag team, but they're not on the level of like the North and these guys. So I think introducing Motor City in there really helps the division a lot.
Yeah, we definitely inserted this match into the positive column for Slammiversary, but things would fall into the other column as the show would progress onward, which is a natural segue to our first of several appearances by Johnny Bravo with Taya Valkyrie backstage, and Taya warns him not to mess up tonight. Well, spoiler, he did. And then Rosemary walks in and tells Bravo she must win the gauntlet match later. So Johnny Bravo is conflicted. What his solution would be? Stay tuned, folks, because you can't make this stuff up. Moose against Tommy Dreamer, an old school rules match. Tommy comes out and he's wearing a shirt that reads "Moose sucks eggs" as an ode to Terry Funk and his feud with Dusty Rhodes. And I feel like we have to do a little bit of an update on some of these stories. So Moose is walking around with the TNA title that he found and has proclaimed himself the TNA champion. He is a fake champion carrying around this belt. Moose also was the most committed to yelling at the non-existent audience, telling them that he was the best wrestler in the world. And he is also now the wrestling god. So I guess multiple wrestling gods exist in pro wrestling, or it's been bestowed upon him by JBL.
Yes, I've personally really enjoyed Moose over the last few weeks, which is something I didn't think I'd ever find myself saying, but I think he's been so entertaining in this character, this just deluded fake champion. As you mentioned, John, he kind of references the crowd a lot at some points. He wasn't doing it tonight, but when he gets, what's his name? David Penzer, the ring announcer, to do his call. He's even been quietening down the non-existent crowd at times, which has been very entertaining. I genuinely really enjoyed him. And I've enjoyed this feud, but knew I would not particularly. I was never interested in the match itself, but mic-wise, leading up to this, I found very entertaining.
Yeah,
Moose is. I was gonna say, John, Moose is just so good with this character. He's committed, like you mentioned earlier, and that's why I think the route they went with the world champion, I'm fine with tonight, because it's time to get Moose back in that top picture. And I think that, maybe after the immediate feud for the champion, we can go to Moose getting that shot, because I just love Moose in this role. And like Davie said, it's not a role that I would have put him in. Like if I were writing the show, that wouldn't have been my idea. I believe it was a year or so ago, John, where you and I were discussing whether or not Impact made the right call by not putting the belt on Moose at that time. And so for him to do this complete 180 and just throw himself into this delusional, egotistical heel character, like he's been so fun. And I just hope we get better matchups for him down the road than, again, no disrespect, but Tommy Dreamer is not what I'm here for.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I found in like the empty arena settings, like when you're doing matches heavily reliant on weapons, I find they're a real negative to me. Like there's no reaction to them. It just feels like aimless, weapon strikes, over and over. Dreamer was like getting around like real slow in this match. And I think you take the crowd out of it. It leaves a lot to be desired here. They did what they could here, working around with, Moose bringing in, a kendo stick. Dreamer used the, White Russian leg sweep, and Moose dove off the top, which looked like a shoulder tackle, and just crashed onto this trash can. The announcer said that Dreamer caught him with a cutter, which might have been a little generous to what exactly happened here, but it was, Moose sprawled out on the floor after this leap. Moose then recovered, threw a bunch of chairs into the ring, and sent Dreamer onto them with a Uranagi followed by a standing moonsault. And then Moose went to the second turnbuckle, misses a moonsault, and Dreamer fights back. He pours thumbtacks onto the canvas, and Moose low blows Dreamer and then takes Dreamer by the head, and he's trying to put his eye into the thumbtacks. I thought they were going to try and beat WWE to the punch here by 24 hours, but Dreamer fought him off. Then Moose gouged him in the eye, sent him face first into the tacks, and speared him to win the match in 11 minutes, 18 seconds. This was the only outcome this match was going to have. And I guess you could have Moose do something where you do some like pseudo unification match with your champion after this, but largely this was put a name against Moose for Moose to run through, and that's what this was, Davie.
Yeah, I would say I don't think the match overstayed its welcome. I think it was exactly the right length. It was what I expected it to be. I was kind of expecting this to be one of the points where we get one of our former kind of TNA guys come back, especially with TNA, Moose running around with the TNA title. And we had the EC3 tease not so long ago where, after Moose finished his match, EC3's music played. So I was surprised it was literally just this match. A positive I'm going to give it. I thought Moose's gear looked fantastic. The white and gold, and he's changed the strap to the white, I thought looked very nice. But the match was whatever. I got into it with the eyes on the thumbtacks because why not? It's 2020 and wrestlers hate eyes, it seems.
Yeah, if the first match was a wonderful Christmas present, John, then this match was Halloween, and we were trick-or-treating, and we were all Charlie Brown in this instance because we got a rock. And we didn't want a rock. We wanted some candy, or at the very least a box of raisins, but we got a rock. And so, again, no disrespect to Tommy Dreamer because Father Time is undefeated and we all can't be as good as we were 20 years ago. But Davey's right. This match was exactly what it needed to be. And I hope that we've kind of moved past the Moose versus the Legends gimmick, even though he is still running around with that TNA belt. I would hope that, we move Moose on to bigger and better things because he's just so good in this role.
Johnny Swinger arrived outside. This was very funny. He said there was a parking spot reserved for Anderson, but he didn't see Ole anywhere. And then he gives Gia Miller the limp handshake. This guy is really great in this role. There's definitely a place for Johnny Swinger on this show. He's very, very entertaining.
Again, shout out to Johnny Swinger for this late career resurgence.
Maybe, Davey, if you continue to watch more ECW, you'll get plenty of Johnny Swinger of 20 years ago to contrast.
Yeah, people in the room were informing me about how long this guy's been around, because honestly, I never heard of this dude until I started writing these reports.
Yes, don't sing it, swing it was the mantra, the cheer of a whole generation back in the 90s.
And we never saw this guy again. Like, he arrived. Did we ever see him again tonight?
No.
He just showed up in this parking spot, and that was it.
Well, we'll get to it with the Chris Bay match, but that was one of the head scratchers of the night for me, was because after this week's Impact, they really led you to feel that this Johnny Swinger-Chris Bay partnership was going to have a big impact, if you will, in the X Division title. And yeah, he just showed up, did his thing, and disappeared.
Well, this next match, I was wishing that several ideas that were injected into this match would have disappeared. We had the number one contenders gauntlet match with the knockouts. And, if nothing else, like this match, just the lineup, you got to see like the depth of characters and performers they have in this division. We started things off with Tasha Steelz and Kylie Rae. And I actually thought that like they had a really good start to this, but this is, Impact loves their Royal Rumbles. And that's what this pretty much was their shortened version of, where they started off for 2 minutes. Then the third entrant would come in, and then we get 1 minute intervals, and the final two would have a regular match. So Steelz and Rae, Kylie Rae, first of all, was to me the standout of the match, and I don't have a whole lot positive to say about this match, so I'll get that one out of the way immediately. Number 3, we get Taya Valkyrie, who is introduced, but it's Johnny Bravo dressed as Taya Valkyrie. This was not a problem having no crowd, because it would have been an equal reaction had there been 50,000 people that were watching this as he came out and Rae and Steelz double teamed and tossed him over the top. And then David Penzer announced Taya Valkyrie has been eliminated. So I didn't know what this was. I would still try to piece it together later. We had Kimberly and Kiera Hogan out next. Followed by Susie, who came in and just delivered shotes to everybody. And then we got our first elimination of Tasha Steelz being knocked out by Kylie Rae. Katie Forbes, hailing from Twerk City, was in 7th, as Forbes then started fighting with Hogan. And this was where this was just falling apart. This was not good, this interaction at all. Madison Rayne came in next, followed by Havoc. And Havoc comes in, and she is in the role of the monster. She is destroying everyone. Everyone's backing away from her. So just remember that. Then we had the real Taya Valkyrie. So we had a full entrance spot reserved for Johnny Bravo to be a dipshit. And he got to be in this match for that. And in fact, he would get 2 stupid dipshit spots. So the real Taya Valkyrie is in, even though she was announced as eliminated for the spot earlier. So then Alicia Edwards comes in, followed by Nevaeh. Josh Matthews is trying to, at this point, he's trying to put over Kylie Rae like this is Ric Flair in the 92 Rumble, saying, can we get an update on the minutes? Kylie Rae has been here from the beginning, and I'm looking at my watch. She has been in this thing for a grand total of 11 minutes at this point. It's like, let's simmer down a little on the Iron Woman here, Kylie Rae. Rosemary comes in. Then the 14th and final entrant is a fake Rosemary with Johnny Bravo, who would not come top 10 in a Halloween costume at some shitty nightclub. This just fell so flat, and you've got Don Callis with this fake laughter. It was like, this was something out of like mid 2000s WWE that you would see, that it was just like, to me, such a mockery. And this was a match that I was looking forward to going in, and it just felt like awful ideas for comedy. Then Susie's eliminated as we're watching this Johnny Bravo dressed up as Rosemary garbage. And then Johnny Bravo eliminates Havoc, who's like the big monster here. It's like, what is going on in this match? Then we just get a slew of eliminations that you can't possibly keep track of. And we get it down to Kylie Rae and Taya Valkyrie, whose match consisted of about 30 seconds and a Canadian Destroyer and super kick, as Kylie Rae pinned Taya Valkyrie. As I said, I thought Kylie Rae was the standout in this thing, but this thing was a grand disappointment for me. But feel free to disagree.
The only good thing that came from this, John, was we get Kylie Rae as the number one contender, especially given, the title switch we get later, because she's got it, you know what I mean? She can go in the ring. She's got the personality you got to give credit, the depth of this division. But the Johnny Bravo stuff was so annoying, especially having him eliminate Havoc. That got me so aggravated, because this division is so good. And it felt, Davie, like if we're playing EWR, right?
Yep.
And we got Johnny Bravo as one of the people on our roster. And we using Johnny Bravo here, we using Johnny Bravo there, we using Johnny Bravo again. At the end of the night, when you get that report, it's going to say the audience turned on Johnny Bravo because you used him too damn much. And that's how I felt after this. Somebody should have told Impact, I was going to say, John, even the once would have been enough, but we didn't even need the once. We didn't need the first time with Taya. It didn't work. It diminished what should have been a showcase match for these women, given that this division, you could make the argument that Impact's got one of the strongest women's division going right now. And at the end of this match, other than Kylie Ray winning, the only thing you take away from this is all that Johnny Bravo foolishness.
It's like it made the whole women's division, like it just painted it as like this comedy division. And it was such a contrast to the title match we'd get later that I just thought this was such a disservice to this whole division that they made this just like a comedy match and bad comedy on top of it.
Yeah, this actually made me really disappointed. I've been singing the women's division's praises, and even in the like the YouTube room for the watch along, so many people were like, "Oh, well, I've come along to check what Impact's doing, and I keep on hearing about this women's division."
Yeah,
and you get served this. My one positive, and this is literally my one positive for the Johnny Bravo thing, was he was dressed as Smee and Tyre was dressed as Captain Hook. So it was a nice like comment on their kind of relationship. That's it. You can, the thing I like about Battle Royals, Royal Rumbles is when you try and weave in different stories that have been going on and try and have them come to a bit of a head. So we've had this kind of triangle with Rosemary, Tyre Valkyrie and Johnny Bravo. And that's the only reason why I see him being in this match. But they didn't even really do anything with it for that. You could have easily had Johnny Bravo on the outside, not in like having himself in the match to kind of further that story. If you were going to do multiple entrants, why not do it on the character who's been teasing a split personality?
Right.
You've got Susie in the ring who has been teasing. She did her like Sue Young finisher on Tuesday. She's having like kind of snaps to like thinking back to when she's Sue Young on TV. Why not do it with her where she gets eliminated as one and comes back as the other, like the kind of Three Faces of Foley sort of thing. If you wanted to do some kind of comedy re-entrance thing, Kiera Hogan has been one of my favorite women's wrestlers, full stop, since watching Impact. And she's doing stupid twerking with Katie Forbes. The whole thing was a mess. And Nate, as you said, the only positive is we're having Kylie Ray going forward for the championship. But this was so disappointing because I think this division's so good. And this just made it look like a complete joke.
Yeah, this I thought was the worst match on the show. So bad that everyone's stream died as a result of it. And it wasn't Sami Callihan coming on for a segment either. Everyone's stream went down, and then it was right as Heath Slater makes his appearance. So my feed goes down. It's down for like 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden Heath is there. You got to rewind his microphone. It's got the worst audio. Like this couldn't have been a worse appearance for this guy. And he's cutting this promo that he wants to be the fourth man in the main event tonight. And he said, "This is the new Heath." And that seems to be what he's going by. He's just going by Heath. And he gets interrupted by Rohit Raju. And Raju says that you are not going to be anywhere near the title match tonight. You're not going to leapfrog me. He said the last time you were in a title match, it sure didn't last too long, which is a wonderful reminder to everyone that this guy just lost in 25 seconds on the other program. So they fought, and then Heath hit a Russian leg sweep out of the corner, sending Raju to the floor. And we'd get more of Heath later on. And I feel where this is going, and we can even talk about it, where it would be to me a tumultuous waste to bring this guy in and you just have him playing his goofball WWE character. My assumption is that he's going to be the goofball, Rhino's friend, and Rhino's going to get him into the company. And then I'm hoping we get a Heath turn, because that promo on Raw told me this guy could be a really great character, but I really question bringing him in to be the 3MB Heath Slater that he kind of felt like tonight. But we should give this a chance for this guy to see what they have planned, because it was one night, but I didn't think tonight's impression was a very strong one for just Heath.
No, and you're right, John. Like, that promo was so good that honestly, it should have earned him a spot on the horror show instead of Slammiversary.
It would have been bigger than Dolph tomorrow night. I can tell you that.
Because nobody wants to watch that match. But again, yes, you're right. Like, I'm hoping that we get a serious Heath Slater, and not comedy guy because
they don't need any more comedy guys.
I was going to say, as we've witnessed on this very show, like there's enough comedy right now without Heath coming in with his shtick.
Davey, what did you think about Just Heath?
Yeah, I do think that's the way they're going to go. I did think he showed like enough aggression on the attack on Rohit that he is going to go in a different direction. Rohit is the guy in Impact who is Heath Slater. He's the guy that loses to everyone. No one wants to partner. So it kind of makes sense that he's the sort of first guy, Heath, who is so well known as being in that position to take out. And then he's even teasing the whole free agent gimmick, which was the thing he had when obviously he wasn't signed by SmackDown or wasn't signed by Raw. So I think they're doing it deliberately. They're kind of calling back the old gimmicks. They're having him with Rhino. And then I think, we can have a turn against Rhino. That can be the first feud and actually show that this guy, there's a lot more to him. But I think it's a rebuilding process that Impact needs to do. And I think that's maybe why they're starting him out here.
Mm-hmm. Willie Mack and Chris Bay for the X Division title was next. And as it was set up on Tuesday, Johnny Swinger was not going to be in his corner. And no Johnny Swinger getting involved in this at all. Instead, they did a match where the two guys wanted to break each other's neck. Chris Bay hit a neck breaker off the apron to the floor that Don Callis was just, he seemed like he fractured his C4 watching this thing. Bay comes back and lands a swinging neck breaker of his own onto Mack in the ring. And then Bay went for the Baymasser, not to be confused with the Famouser. It was stopped. He took an exploder into the corner. Chris Bay starts complaining about his neck to the referee, but he's playing possum, nails Mack on the turnbuckle, and then Bay hits a Canadian Destroyer for a 2 count. Mack gets up with a stunner. Then Mack misses the 6-star frog splash, and Bay gets knocked into the referee, pokes Mack in the eyes, and hits this crucifix bomb, followed by an os cutter, and wins the match and the title in 11 minutes, 48 seconds. Nate, how did you think this match came across?
I like this match a lot, John. Obviously, I'm a fan of both of these guys. Willie Mack is a dude that's been underrated and undervalued for a long time. And he's just so good in the ring as well as, with his character work. And then Chris Bay's the future. And so seeing these two was a fun matchup. My only issue, and it's not even really a big issue, Davie, is I don't know if I would have put the belt on Bay this soon.
I agree. I was really looking forward to this match. I really enjoyed this match. I could have even had this go on a bit longer. I felt there was another gear it didn't quite get to.
They were getting there. I thought.
They were getting there, and I felt just maybe...
I think this match would have killed in front of an actual crowd.
Yeah, this was the one on paper going into this show that I thought, this is the one that I think would be most enhanced with a match. And the two worked hard. I think that they could probably have a better match, but this was... I was pretty happy with this.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think I was surprised the title... was dropped from Willie Mack so quickly. It feels like he only just won it a month or so ago. Chris Bay, I see a lot in. I think he's got this great cocky character just down. He's awesome in the ring. I'm not really sure who good challengers could be for him. That the X Division does seem kind of empty. Maybe have split the Rascals off even more and have some of them feud. And I kind of worry for Willie Mack a bit. I think this feud's going to go for a bit, but I don't see where he's going to go. Unless I guess you could always do the Rich Swann thing, because obviously we see he's back now. But I enjoyed the match. This kind of put a smile back on my face after all the last two matches we'd seen.
Well, Rhino had a smile on his face backstage as he reunited with Heath. And then Scott D'Amore walked in and told Heath, "You don't actually work here, and there's a pandemic going on. This is a closed set. There's no guests permitted, so you've got to leave." And Rhino says he's going to figure it out and tells Heath to show up on Tuesday. So I don't know if he's violating any bylaws here by just inviting a guest to Tuesday's tapings. But hopefully that's where this is going, that Rhino gets this guy a job and then Heath turns on Rhino. Because again, like Heath just coming in as the WWE character, I don't know what that serves for Impact to just bring a guy in to be like, it's to me, it's not a kind of big signing at all. I think that, you know, the guy could be utilized much better. So that to me would be a logical direction to go and feud with Rhino, I guess. The North was next, taking on Ken Shamrock and Sami Callihan, better known after Tuesday as the Frog and the Scorpion, for the Impact Tag titles.
I loved, John, you trying to recap that story the other day. You're like, there's a frog and there's a scorpion and there's a stream and I think they're trying to get across the street, but Sting it. I don't know.
There were definitely some holes in the retelling of that story, but thank you to the people that messaged me to correct how I butchered the story. It was very telling though when I made the joke on Twitter that the North defeated the Scorpion and the Frog, and how many people did not get the joke. That tells me are not watching Impact. So I think that was my informal poll of who's following Impact. But anyway, so the North start this one out. Shamrock goes for a gogoplata onto Josh Alexander. Josh Alexander is great. I think this guy, you know, this is a great role for him with Ethan Page. They're a tremendous tag team, but this guy certainly has upside as like a top singles heel. I think at some point down the road that they could certainly explore with this guy. Callihan then strikes Page, forcing him to stun his partner, Josh Alexander. The North then gained control of Callihan for a while. And then you've got kind of Shamrock and Callihan trying to work together, but clearly getting on each other's nerves. Shamrock applied the ankle lock. Then Alexander applied the same hold onto Callihan, and they're just staring at each other with the ankle locks applied, but the submissions get broken up. Shamrock then has the ankle lock on Alexander, and Page sends Callihan into Shamrock, upsetting Shamrock, who's pissed off at Sami for breaking up the hold, and shoves him. Callihan then nailed Alexander with a GTS and a pile driver. Page again is making the save, and that's kind of the story here. Ethan Page continually making the save as they had Alexander beat. And then Shamrock takes Josh off the top turnbuckle with a belly-to-belly suplex. Shamrock then goes for a dive to the floor, and they just explain that he couldn't stop himself. Like, his target was way gone, but Shamrock just could not stop. So he flew over the top, and was committed to this dive and just crashes and burns. The North then put Shamrock into the ring. Callahan's taken out, and they hit their double team, neutralizer deal and pin Shamrock in 15:54 to retain the tag titles. Decent match, I will say, and I'm kind of not dying to see Shamrock and Callihan continue to feud. That's kind of what they were teasing here, but I'm fine with the North retaining the tag titles here. Like, these guys are the cornerstone of this tag division, Davie.
Yeah, I think these guys are fantastic. I think the way they managed to stay relevant and entertaining whilst being stuck in Canada, and not being able to perform on Impact, doing the stuff at like Santino's school, was a lot of fun. I think Ethan Page has so much personality. I really enjoy watching him, and you've already sung Josh Alexander's praises. I think these guys are great, and it's good to see that tag division being bolstered now after tonight, because otherwise I'd be saying, I just want these guys to go elsewhere, because I think you're missing out on a load of great matches for the North. The match itself was good. I find it so strange watching Shamrock, because as I mentioned earlier, I didn't watch TNA. I didn't watch MMA. So I kind of watched him in 1999, 98 when I was getting into wrestling. And then it's 22 years later and I'm starting watching him again. It's very strange. His was probably the low points of the match for me. When Callihan was mixing it up with the North, I thought the match was quite exciting. But the right move, I think, keeping the titles on the North. I was surprised we didn't see more of a Scorpion Sting the Frog situation here. It was the usual malfunction at the junction, a bit of miscommunication, but not so much the real like stabbing in the back breaking this team apart. Maybe that's still to come.
No, they could have made it across the river, I think, if they just had a bit better communication.
I think that when you talk about the North, and this is something, John, you and I talked about a few pay-per-views ago when I wasn't exactly sold on the North, and you were like, you just got to watch these guys. And to their credit, like Alexander and Page have won me over. Like they are the class of the division. Granted, the division is not as deep as it used to be, but I think they are so good. And this match exceeded my expectations because I did not have high hopes. I thought we were going to get another spectacle like we got with Moose and Dreamer earlier, and this was better than that. And you got to give a lot of credit to the North. You also have to give credit to Sami Callihan, who is still one of the best characters in this company, whether he's at the top of the card or in the middle of the card. And I also kind of have to tip my cap to Ken Shamrock. Lack of air breaks aside, I think they've actually managed to book Ken Shamrock better in 2020 than they did when he was actually their first world champion, which doesn't make any sense. Back when Shamrock was actually younger and could go more, they didn't know what the hell to do with him. But now in 2020, 18, 19 years later, we figured out how to use this guy as this aging special attraction. And like Ken Shamrock isn't what he was 20 years ago, but I think he did what he needed to do to get the story across between him and Sami. So overall, I would say this is probably a success.
Well, if you, his book that just came out that Jonathan Snowden wrote, it's an excellent book, but it's also like harrowing what this guy has put his body through, from drug abuse, from like everything. It's amazing this guy is doing what he's doing now. It's actually like somewhat, you have a certain concern given this guy's, physical limitations on top of, an older guy with, during a pandemic as well. And a guy that just seems that he is going to take significant risks in a lot of these matches. But I guess if this is a guy that's bound and determined to still be doing this at this age, and he's had, he outlines it in the book, like he's had enormous tax problems in his life that I prefer pro wrestling at this point than MMA, because he would be doing MMA right now if he could as well. Like if wrestling wasn't an option.
I mean, sometimes people can't stop, John. Sometimes you jump in the air and your target is clearly not there, and you're stuck. You can't do anything, so you have to crash and burn. And so, fortunately, Ken, with this late resurgence in his career, is not crashing and burning. And you're right. Like I would hate to see some MMA organization take advantage of this dude at this stage of his career, because that's not where he needs to be. So pro wrestling probably isn't the safest profession for a man of his age, but it's better than the alternative.
So then, afterwards, Page demands they take Shamrock out of the ring, and they're running down the tag division. Everyone laughed at them last year when they said they would rewrite history in this division. They've had the tag titles for over a year, and Page calls them the greatest tag team in Impact history, prompting the Motor City Machine Guns to come out, and they put over the North's camaraderie and their ring attire. But they disagree that they're the greatest team in Impact history. And Sabin says that they have a match to take on the North this Tuesday on TV for the tag titles. So setting things up for Impact on Tuesday, which, I mean, was a smart thing to, if you are getting some curious viewers on tonight's show, having something to send them to Tuesday's show with. This was kind of it. It's not like they shot some major angle that you want to see followed up on Tuesday. This was kind of your hook for Tuesday.
And it worked for me, because normally I watch Impact on the weekend after the show has already aired. But like for this, to see the Machine Guns in the North, I'll watch on Tuesday. So they at least picked up one viewer, and I'm in the key demo, John. So that's a win for them.
That means you matter to everybody. Then we had Gia Miller, who was trying to get a word with Anderson and Gallows in the locker room, but instead Rich Swann walked out on crutches, and he was here to support Willie Mack, and he's going to have his eye on the main event, because once he's cleared, he's coming for that Impact title. So some foreboding here. Jordan Grace, Deonna Purrazzo for the Knockouts title. These two just, I thought they had a great match here together. We had Grace land this huge suicide dive early in the match. And then Purrazzo comes back and they're really putting over Grace's power here, that she's got the power advantage, but Purrazzo is this submission expert, specifically with the Fujiwara armbar. And she focuses all of her offense on weakening Grace's arm. And I thought Grace's selling was fantastic here. Like throughout all of her power stuff, she was selling that arm and trying to avoid the armbar that Purrazzo was going for. She would keep her arms clasped, but also, it was Purrazzo's central focus was that arm. Grace, rolls her up into a rear naked choke and then wrap Purrazzo's back around the post. She's still selling the arm. And there's this spot where Purrazzo comes off the ropes into a Michinoku driver. And it wasn't smooth. And Don Callis was on top of things, explaining that the arm is weakened and that's going to affect her offense. And I thought that was like perfectly viable explanation that worked to the story of the match. They then started trading German suplexes. Purrazzo hit her pendulum suplex, and then Grace comes back, Vader bomb, and then Purrazzo blocks the Grace driver. Grace then is driving down elbows. Purrazzo gets like a crucifix and pulls back on both arms, like a double Fujiwara armbar, and Grace is forced to submit at 15 minutes and 11 seconds. This was my match of the night. I thought these two were fantastic together. I really, really enjoyed this match, and I thought this was a great showcase of the Knockouts division, and I just thought it was a great story that they told. Grace had tremendous selling, and you can easily go back to a rematch at some point, and a great introduction overall for Deonna Purrazzo, since they introduced her with the vignettes and building up to this match. So I thought this was the strongest part of the show tonight, Nate.
Yeah, this was so good. I think this and the opening tag with the Rascals and the Motor City Machine Guns were probably the highlights of the night for me. Jordan Grace is another underrated performer in this company. And I think maybe a positive from the fact that Tessa's not coming back is when she was around, even though she wasn't in the women's division proper, she kind of sucked all the oxygen out of the room for the other women on the roster. And now that Tessa's out of the picture, we can focus back on this Knockouts division, which has become extremely deep over the past couple months. And like, I love the addition of Deonna Purrazzo. And so I think that this was a really strong match. I'd love to see them do it again, but maybe even more than that, Davey, I'm excited for the matchup with Kylie now, because not only do I think will it impress in the ring, but those characters, I think they can do some really interesting stuff leading up to the match with those two characters.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the match I've been looking forward to, Kylie Rae and Deonna Purrazzo. This, like John, this was my match of the night. I really, really enjoyed this. This was probably the one I was most looking forward to going into it as well. I like how I feel this might have been deliberate, but Deonna Purrazzo's had a lot of mic time since joining Impact. I think she's only wrestled one match and it was a squash, which is great because NXT, I barely heard her voice at all. So I think it's deliberate for her to kind of build herself up. We know she can wrestle, so now let's hear her talk a bit more. So that's been really good for her. This match I really enjoyed. I hate to go on about it now. We're like 3-4 months into this empty arena thing, but this would have killed in front of a crowd, and a real shame that there wasn't anything there, but it still sucked me in. I thought this was great.
Yeah. I late in the show too. I mean, this was second from the top, but 15 minutes, it's not like they overstayed their welcome either, which I think I just have, recurring effects from that Naito Evil match last week that, I mean, took a year off my life. I just thought this was great placement, and yeah, it was definitely my match of the night. I thought this was definitely the strongest thing that we had here. So after the fact, they announced Bound for Glory will be their next pay-per-view on Saturday, October 24th. And we didn't go over this, guys, but they did try the experiment of running a Saturday night card tonight. Did you think that this night worked any better than a Sunday, Davie? Or do you think that, it's Saturday, you're talking about competition in in normal time, we're talking a lot of UFCs that run Saturdays. There's a lot of, college games that are happening. What do you think about Saturday versus Sunday? That is typically the more traditional wrestling night, although not a night AEW's decided to take up.
Honestly, I've not had a normal schedule for a good 15 years, so it makes no difference to me.
Thursday afternoon, bound whatsoever. For glory.
Yeah. So it really makes no difference to me. I know it's clashing with UFC tonight, so I don't know if, I think Impact's going to kind of struggle getting a good audience anyway. So, I think it's a shame you're up against UFC, but what's the alternative? You're going up against WWE tomorrow. I'm not the best person to comment on it, as I said, because I never know what day of the week it is anyway. I only know from what wrestling's on TV.
As someone with a calendar, Nate, that tries to follow the days of the week, does it make any difference to you? And I mean, we are talking about Impact here, that I think they have their audience, that I don't know how much, running a Saturday night is necessarily, like, if you're an Impact fan, I think you're going to watch it regardless. I guess it's an experiment that I think it's just noteworthy that they tried it, and they're going to do it again in October.
Well, that's the thing. Like, the Impact audience is pretty insulated at this point, right? Like, they're not fluctuating up or down that much, regardless of what night you put it on. I prefer Saturday, though. Like, I know Sunday is the traditional wrestling pay-per-view night, but I kind of like Saturday because I'm up late on Saturdays anyway. And so, in a world where we don't have traditional sports outside of, UFC, NASCAR, maybe golf, Korean baseball, if you will, I think this filled a void for me. I don't now. The question is, once we start to get the NBA back at the end of the month, once we start to get, maybe an NFL season potentially, will this still work? I don't know. But, for this night, I actually enjoyed it on a Saturday as opposed to if it was on tomorrow night.
So it's main event time. Ace Austin was out first, accompanied by Madman Fulton, and they're preceded by Trey and Eddie Edwards, and we're awaiting the fourth entrant, and out comes Rich Swann, who throws the crutches away, and he is announced as the fourth man. But before the match begins, we hear music, and out comes this masked figure who reveals himself to be Eric Young, not as Super Eric. And he has joined the match, calling himself a world-class surprise, and it is now a 5-way, bringing up that he won his Impact title at Slammiversary, and he's going to do it again. And this was our, I guess, second to last surprise of the night, because we would get one more. But we'll start with you, Nate. This lineup, the addition of Rich Swann and Eric Young as well, in terms of the additions to the main event.
Honestly, I would have just been fine with the addition of Rich Swann. Now looking back in hindsight, there's nothing against Eric Young. I think Eric Young is a perfectly fine wrestler, and he makes sense coming back to Impact as opposed to, going to an AEW or MLW. He makes sense coming home, so to speak. But he wasn't that big top-notch surprise that they were promising us. And so, like, again, outside of EC3 maybe, or somebody like Amani Brown, they weren't going to meet my expectations. And yeah, seeing EY back, it's cool, but honestly, I thought it stepped on what could have been an interesting moment for Rich Swann if you wanted to tell that story.
Davie, I'm kind of curious with you as well that, we see, like, I think it's kind of it's a difficult balancing act, because you have these performers that have history with TNA, but, you have seen them go to WWE, and a larger fan base probably sees them just in that prism. And, a generation or multiple generations ago at this point, we would see sometimes where you'd have those big stars in territories. They went to the WWF and would kind of flounder, go back to their territory, and they're no longer seen as that big star because we saw you on the national scene. I guess as you look at, I think Impact, you just have to look at how many of these stars that you're bringing back, that you don't just want to be full of, talent that your larger audience saw not succeed in WWE. Yeah,
I mean, for me, this was both entrants. it kind of felt like Rey Mysterio coming out at the 2014 Royal Rumble. You know, you're hoping for Daniel Bryan, and it's like, oh, I like these guys, but I don't want to see you right now. I was wanting D. Bry. Like, that's kind of how it felt here to me. I think on paper, you tell me that 5-way, it's like, yeah, that sounds like a good match. But you've built these guys up so much, and I think the difference is, with all the people they announced, I think EC3 would have been a bigger deal in this match, because although he, well, I don't even want to say fail, because he didn't have a chance whatsoever on the main roster, he did have somewhat of a run in NXT, whereas I don't think Eric Young was ever even at that. Like, sure, Sanity was a thing, but I never really saw him as a big deal in NXT either. Like, I recognized he was a talented wrestler, but for me, as someone who doesn't have that familiarity with kind of TNA's back catalog, it was just like, oh, okay, it's Eric Young.
And I think that's a good point, Davie. Like, if they had just announced EC3, if they had just announced that Eric Young was going to be in the match from the beginning, and we could have gotten vignettes leading up to this, and speaking about why Slammiversary is so important to him, speaking about why coming back home, so to speak, is important to him, I think this would have played much better. But given the fact that you put him in this unwinnable situation as the big surprise of the evening, it just kind of fell flat.
Part of me wonders as well, John, you mentioned at the beginning who would have worked for you as a big surprise. Now, all the kind of hurdles Impact have been thrown over the last couple of months, with obviously like speaking out and Tessa and Elgin, and this main event changing about 6 times. Obviously, none of us know what the status is, but Miro Rusev is someone I think would have made a huge impact in this main event. But obviously, he's unfortunately come down with COVID, so has been pulled from that. So it does make me wonder if maybe when they were building all this up, he might have been that initial thought to be the guy in this match. And then when that wasn't going to happen, you go, all right, well, let's get Eric Young in there.
I think it's a really tough spot as well to introduce a guy, because, like, let's say they had a Rusev, like, or even had EC3 been in this role, you almost have to put them over for the title. Yep. And I think that's very tough you do that night one, which is fine if you've got a great idea for it. But I just think it's kind of tough when you're immediately coming in and winning the title, or you lose and it's almost like your debut is overshadowed by the fact you've failed on night one as well. I kind of looked at like the EC3 introduction, that at least leaves you with some intrigue of what this guy is going to do when he is coming back. That I think that was a better introduction than, say, an Eric Young that, you know, he'll spin off for a feud here with Rich Swann, but you can kind of see where he's slotted coming in. But let's get into the actual match. So it's an elimination match, and it's pretty crazy from the get-go. Madman Fulton catches Edwards and drops him onto the edge of the apron and then gets ejected. And then we got one highlight here where Trey slid to the floor into a Canadian destroyer delivered to Rich Swann. And Shane Helms remarked, seeing this move, putting it over, but then saying, "Don't waste it." And I would say that I don't know if this was like a hallmark of the match that most would necessarily have noticed it, because I will be fully transparent that I totally missed this move until Shane Helms commented on it. So I don't know if it necessarily rang true with me, but it did look very impressive. Edwards hit a Tiger Driver, and then Trey broke up a pinfall with a Meteora off the top, and the announcers called out, "Was that the smartest move?" Like, it's an elimination match. There is no problem if you just watch Edwards pin this guy and then you attack him. So instead he breaks up this cover on Edwards, that Edwards had, and Eric Young hits Trey with the pile driver and eliminates him. And I'll say, Davie, like, you were watching all the build up, like, they were putting a lot on Trey. And I would say, like, this is a pretty underwhelming outing for Trey, where he's not only out first, but also out with like a pretty like silly way of explaining it. Like, this guy just kind of this fluke finish where he's out of there.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed watching Trey recently. I think he's really upped his game and has his promos, I feel, have been pretty good as well. And he was actually the highlight of the match for me until his elimination. So it was a real shame. I kind of had it down for when I saw that it was Eric Young as the mystery guy. I kind of saw Trey and Ace Austin being the final two because they've had the biggest feud going into this.
I mean, if you break down into a fight in an empty gym, I mean, that is a grudge at a level that only a pay-per-view main event can contain. So the match continues with the remaining four.
I mean, we've seen people in America fight for less, fight for the right to not wear a mask. So anything goes right now, John Pollock.
Have you guys seen the new anti-mask masks where it's masks that have anti-mask messaging on them? It's like the stupidest thing I've ever heard of, but it is technically a mask. So whatever. Young then is beating down on Rich Swann. This part was very funny. Young just yells at Swann, "Let down." And then he points at me, "Reward," in terms of the surprises tonight.
Like that's rather presumptuous, EY.
Well, then it was followed by Young going for a pile driver that was countered with a roll up, and Swann eliminated Eric Young, who then snapped by snapping the ankle of Rich Swann, the previously injured ankle. He destroys it with a chair multiple times, blasts the ankle with the chair, and Swann is just howling in pain. Young leaves, and then Ace Austin is in. Swann tries to fight back with punches, but eventually Austin kicks out the leg and hits the fold to eliminate Rich Swann, and we're down to Ace Austin and Eddie Edwards. Edwards is attacking him. Austin then sneaks away, landing a super kick. Edwards hits the Boston Knee Party. Austin kicks out. Matthews gets in the line that Edwards beat Bobby Lashley with that move. Little shade thrown there. And then Austin hits the fold. Edwards kicks out, and then Austin misses coming off the top. Edwards hits another Boston Knee Party, and then the Die Hard Flosion, pinning Ace Austin. 24 minutes and 26 seconds they go. Eddie Edwards wins, which I would say was mildly surprising, but it seemed like Eddie Edwards to me has been a character that has been just lost in Impact. Like, you can see that they have a lot of, they see a lot of value in the guy, but he just seems to be someone that doesn't have really a concentrated direction other than, Ace Austin was going after his wife for a year, and that was a big feud, and he went nuts. Alicia was going to divorce him. Then they weren't going to divorce. It was quite the saga for one Eddie Edwards, but here he comes out of it.
So you're saying it was an entanglement, John Pollock?
It was an entanglement. Yes, they needed a red table to really settle that whole dispute with Alicia and Eddie, because I don't think Eddie was giving his blessing, much like Will. So Eddie Edwards wins the championship. How'd you think the main event came across, Davie?
Yeah, on the subject of Eddie Edwards, I kind of felt sorry for him going into this match because he had the triple threat match with Tessa and Michael Elgin set for Rebellion, was it? Just before the COVID hit. And then obviously we then went empty arena. Eddie Edwards wasn't coming in. Tessa Blanchard wasn't coming in. The match changed. And then we're building up to this. And his main feud is with Elgin and Tessa Blanchard. And then they're released, and he's the one who really should be going for this title because he never got the title shot he should have had months ago. But then you've got the Trey and Ace Austin feud going on, and he just kind of felt there. So all of his story had kind of been taken away from him, and he's felt derailed for the last 4 months, really. So maybe putting the title on him is a way to kind of restart that, but it wasn't the sort of emotional, like, oh, this is what this guy has been ever since losing this title way back when. This is the thing he's been fighting for. You just kind of forgot about him because of everything that's happened. Match itself, I found thoroughly entertaining. I would say I was kind of a bit like, kind of the air was out of it to start with because I was a bit disappointed with the reveals. But the match itself, I thought was very entertaining.
What'd you think, Nate?
It was a solid match. I think that when you talk about Eddie Edwards, he was my pick if we didn't get a big surprise, and this is not shade at Eric Young, but,
this was Nate saying, worst case scenario, we got Eddie Edwards.
Yeah. I was like, out of the available options, and obviously this is before I knew Rich Swann was going to be in the match, it made the most sense, I guess, for Eddie. Granted, they've been telling the story about Trey, but in terms of looking forward, it makes sense if you want to go back to Eddie and Moose eventually, because, yes, Eddie has had a lot of chapters in his story over the past couple years in Impact, John. Some of them have been really good, like the feud with Sami Callihan, and some have been not so good, like the entanglement. And so Moose and Eddie, they have an established storyline history. And so that's something positive that can come from this if they choose to go in that direction. But getting back to the match, I thought everybody worked really hard. And I think my enjoyment of the match probably would have come off a lot better, John, had we known that EY was going to be in from the beginning, rather than making this a big mystery, and I think I'm looking forward to Rich Swann and Eric Young, because I love Rich Swann, and EY is really solid. So that could be fun. I think we're getting more of Trey and Ace, which could be fun. And then we've got Eddie out here with the belt, and he was put in a bad spot because his story, like, this isn't the story ramping up to a champion that we've been telling, or they've been telling with Eddie Edwards. He's just kind of the guy that happened to be there. He's, not to make this political, but he's Joe Biden. He's not the guy you wanted for the spot, John Pollock. He's not the guy that you get enthusiastic about, but he's the best of a bad bunch of options. And so, okay, let's coronate President Biden, a.k.a. champion Eddie Edwards.
Well, does that mean that Eddie Edwards is going to need a running mate to be his second in whatever future feuds that?
Yes, he needs to announce that Kiera Hogan is going to be his vice president.
Well, perfect analogy, I think. I think that number one, I think that for the build up to this, Impact had to probably do some incredible maneuvering to make all the TV they shot make sense when you figure that they were building up to a 5-way match that was going to include champion Tessa Blanchard and challenger Michael Elgin to this. That said, I think it's a great point about Eric Young. And whenever you say mystery participant, mystery partner, people's expectations are going to go in a million different directions. So I think that sometimes, if you don't have a great payoff, you're setting people up for disappointment. I think the idea with Impact was there's going to be so many different surprises that's the hook of the pay-per-view, that even if you're let down with one appearance, well, we've got other ones showing up too. And that was the whole basis of this pay-per-view, was who is going to show up. And that would lead us to our post-match, where Madman Fulton returns and him and Ace Austin are attacking Edwards when Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows come out to their new theme. And they walk down the ramp. Luke Gallows almost took a spill here, if you were paying attention. Luckily kept his footing. And they got in, and they're staring down Fulton and Austin. And we don't know which way they're going. They tease, shaking hands with Austin and Fulton, but then attack them. And we get a gun stun. They hit the magic killer onto Austin as Edwards fights with them as well. And then it's Anderson, Gallows, and Edwards together in the ring, sharing some beers together. No one poured beer on each other like in AEW. They all just accepted the beer gift from Anderson and Gallows. And we cut to one final video, and there is the mystery drinker throughout all of these videos. It's a super pissed off EC3 who looks fucking angry. And he throws the glass against the wall and just stares a hole as the show ends. So angry EC3 is coming back to Impact Wrestling.
I love that, John. Like, I'll talk about Gallows and Anderson in a second, but I love the EC3 as Thanos at the end of the pay-per-view. Instead of grabbing a gauntlet and saying, I'll do it myself, he throws his liquor against the wall, which has the 3 emblem on it. And he's just like, I'll do it myself. And so I'm excited, because I think, you brought up the point, John. How do fans react to somebody who has quote unquote failed in another organization? And I think with EC3, it's clear to anybody with two eyes that the company failed him and not the other way around.
Sorry, so not Rey Mysterio.
So not Rey Mysterio, not Seth Rollins after Sunday. So anybody with two eyes can see that the WWE is the one that dropped the ball on EC3. And so to me, it almost feels like that episode of The Simpsons where I think it's like Homer ruins Las Vegas and the Vegas performers go back. They leave Springfield and they go back to Vegas and they're welcomed with open arms. And that's how it feels. Cause, I think, especially if we had crowds right now, EC3 coming back would be a big deal for this company because he was one of the few bright spots during a very dark period in the company's history. So I'm excited to see what he brings on this next run.
And I think this is the best company for EC3. Of all the options that he's got out there, Impact to me is the best fit for an EC3.
Yeah, because he already comes in the door with the history, and he's already a top guy, just for the fact that he's coming home to Impact. And so I think like he's going to be great, and I'm looking forward to it. I like this angry drunk EC3 that we got in the very last seconds of the show. And then speaking of drunks, when you talk about Gallows and Anderson, I think this could be a really good spot for them. I think. Obviously, this isn't as great as your idea, John, with the Bullet Club invading Impact, but I think that this will go so much better than Gallows' last run in TNA or Impact with Aces and Eights. And I think
wow, you're really setting the bar low. This is going to be better than Aces and Eights. Okay.
I'm putting my name to this, John. You can make that the pull quote for this podcast episode. Better than Aces and Eights. I think that Gallows is going to work fine here, but I'm really excited to see what Carl Anderson can do in this company and given a little bit of freedom and allowed us to talk more. Cause, even that promo that they did last night when, the signing was official, I thought that was really well done. And so I think these guys could be really effective in Impact and in this tag division.
So, Davie, I'd go thumbs in the middle on this show. Like, I thought it was, overall, I really enjoyed Jordynne Grace and Deonna Purrazzo. I thought the opening tag was very good. And I think the main event, by the end of it, I think you've set up some different directions. The new people coming in, I think is gonna inject some interest in Impact to at least be curious for people to check in and see what's going on. So, I'd give this, I can only go thumbs in the middle. I can't go thumbs up on the show, but where do you land? Maybe you thought higher.
No, I was the same. I was thumbs in the middle. I think there were quite a few, like, actually really entertaining matches to watch, but this show was purely selling itself on the surprises. And I feel, although I think after a bit of time's gone past, you'll go, this is great. We've really bolstered our roster now. Which they needed. The tag division needed it. The main event scene needed it. So you've got all these great guys coming back now, which is awesome. But I think they built it up so much. People's expectations got so high. And I think a lot of people did get the show based on that and might feel a little cheated and might not want to come back because of that. But after a bit of time's passed, I think you'll see that apart from that gauntlet match, which really should have just been like a 4-way for the number one contenders, that would have been great. And then I think the show would have moved a little further up in my ratings. But yeah, thumbs in the middle.
We do have some feedback here, so we'll quickly go through this feedback and might bring up some other points here. The forum gave this show a 5.77 out of 10, Ooh. So it does get a pass. Brandon from Oshawa writes, over the last couple of years, I've caught some of the Impact pay-per-views through nefarious means. I decided that since there was a bit of buzz for this one, I'd fork out the cash. It will be the last time I do that. I wouldn't pay $1 for their shows after this crap. I can't believe they actually had the audacity to say that we'll remember this show for the rest of our lives. They needed something big to happen. A big angle. Something. We got nothing. In fact, I don't even know what's going on. Who was supposed to be the guy walking through the town at the beginning? I think that's pretty clear. At the beginning, we had this video of this guy in a hoodie going around Nashville. I guess the hoodie guy was, EC3? Is that what we're to believe?
EC3 walking up Broadway, having a load of whiskey, yeah.
Realizes all the bars are shut down, so he's got to go back home to drink up.
Can't be dancing at honky tonk anymore. So yeah.
Why was Swan in what we were told was the locker room of Gallows and Anderson? 3 people grabbed the glasses of whiskey, but who were they? I thought it would be Gallows and Anderson with someone, but I don't think they gave any clue that it was them. EC3 threw a glass, but I didn't get if he was supposed to be one of them. Overall, the show was a joke. I think one big question they leave is kind of where Anderson and Gallows do go, because they don't, they celebrated with Edwards, but they really were not given any kind of like defined role tonight, other than you clearly see they are going to be treated like big stars in this company.
And not to refute Brother Brandon's feedback, but from the emotion that he poured into this, I do think Impact was right, and he will remember this show for the rest of his life. That's the show. That's the show that got me off of Impact for good.
Impact or Access TV sent out this press release after Slammiversary, and it includes a quote from Scott D'Amore. Slammiversary 2020 will go down as the biggest game-changing event in Impact Wrestling history. The biggest, not Angle showing up, not we're going to Monday nights. No, the biggest game-changing event in Impact Wrestling history. Jackie from Orlando writes, strangely enough, I grew up a TNA fan, although I fell off during the Hogan era. I have periodically checked back for pay-per-views and special episodes. That being said, I have mixed feelings on this show. On the one hand, this was the most buzz any Impact show has had in some time, and the top half of the card capitalized on that with some great matches. On the other hand, the first half was plagued with a myriad of technical issues and weak in-ring showings for the Gauntlet and Moose vs. Dreamer. With so many eyes on the product, it's sad to see them fall short at anything, but I do feel they set up a lot for coming weeks with the returns. Plus, we rarely see a strong babyface faction, so I appreciate that. I guess alluding to, like, Edwards and Anderson and Gallows, which we'll see if that's an alliance on TV or not. Ben from Vancouver here. Loved having Callis back on commentary. The Motor City Machine Guns were a nice surprise for their opening match. Match of the night for me was Grace versus Perazzo. Also really enjoyed the North against Shamrock and Callahan. Main event was a mixed bag. No reason for Swan or EY to be in the match. Both were a huge letdown after a lot of buildup. I'd say for that, Nate, like, we're clearly going to get a feud out of that with those two.
Yeah, and it should be good. Like, I think that, again, had we known that this was going to be the match 2 weeks ago or a month ago, I think people would have a much different impression of it, as opposed to this kind of sour taste that's left in people's mouths. To use another video game analogy, Davie, I've been playing a lot of NBA 2K20 during this pandemic.
Oh, PS4?
Oh, on the Xbox. Sorry. Oh, we could have had some.
Could have had some fun there.
That would have been a great match. But I've really been getting into the My GM mode, and right now I'm in charge of the Sacramento Kings. And John, like, the people wanted me to bring in some star power for this team. And I had the chance to get Kawhi Leonard. I had the chance to maybe try to get Anthony Davis, but that wouldn't help the Kings right now. I needed depth on my roster. So instead of Kawhi Leonard, instead of Paul George or Anthony Davis, I brought in Ricky Rubio and the Hernan Gomez brothers, because that secures my backcourt and my front court. And the people did not like that. Like, they stopped. Like, I'm losing money right now. People are not coming to these Sacramento Kings games, even though I have the 4th best record in the Western Conference, John. And this analogy is leading to the end point, which is, I think this is a good move in terms of depth for the roster, but it's not the big splash you needed to make. It's not, this ridiculous statement that Scott D'Amore put out. It's not this game changer. And unfortunately, if you promise something that big and don't deliver, your audience is going to turn away, much like my beloved Sacramento Kings fans.
Well, it's a great point. And it's one I mentioned this week as well, is that whoever they were going to bring in tonight, the success or failure is going to be judged 6 to 8 months from now, when you look at, okay, they brought an EC3 back and look how better they utilized him, or rehabbed Anderson and Gallows, who were just, fodder on WWE television. Like, all of these on paper are just, they're not going to be met with, oh my God, I can't believe they brought this guy in, because I didn't think that there were any of those names that were going to elicit that initial splash. It's going to be ones that months from now they look at, like, what a great pickup that they had. That look what they did with Heath. Just Heath has become great. maybe we'll look back at it and it'll be, several pickups and it's their booking and character development that really grow. But it's going to be the long game, I think, for some of these, in terms of whether they're successful or whether they sort of just blend into Impact. Cause I think Impact, their biggest challenge is going to be trying to make a splash as a whole and just trying to get a spotlight on them. That's been their biggest challenge to me of the past 2 years. Next one here is Nick from Lansing. As someone who's been keeping up with Impact mostly through recaps and not watching week to week, shout out to Davie there. The card intrigued me enough to tune in, and I was glad I did. Every match was entertaining, and commentary was able to fill in most of the details. So clearly, Nick, his stream went down for 19 minutes and 10 seconds during the gauntlet match. Top 3 matches for me in no real order was the X Division match, the tag title match, and the main event. The use of ex-WWE stars will probably be one of the biggest talking points out of the show, but I thought that they handled the mass influx of talent as well as could be. Heath Blank showing up and being removed after a Rhino reunion was fun. Eric Young put on a good show, especially in his vicious moments with Rich Swann. And the Good Brothers coming at the end was probably the most obvious of the debuts, but I thought they looked solid in the ring in that short burst. Yeah, we got a magic killer and drinking beer. So, I mean, they did succeed on those. Gallows had some trouble walking down the ramp, but that's okay. Gerard here. Solid, but not spectacular show. Main event was the best match, followed by Chris Bay versus Willie Mack. Bay is going to be a huge star and has that it factor. I was happy to see Rich Swann as a main event surprise. He has arguably been the best worker in Impact when he's been healthy. And given how good Eric Young looked tonight, their feud should be great. I haven't been a consistent Impact watcher, but the Machine Guns versus North this Tuesday is going to get me to definitely tune in. Alexander from Portland, we'll condense this one. This is a bit lengthy. I'll start off with the good. The Knockouts division has a variety of interesting characters. Evil Carter III looked menacing. Heath cut a heated promo. Eric Young becoming unhinged was a good direction. It seems like everyone's going crazy. That's kind of the unifying theme here, which I think Heath will go. Impact using the time to build up their show on Tuesday was a smart move. Then there's the bad, the awful replays, the mic issues, the lights beaming straight into the camera during the Knockouts Rumble, Ken Shamrock looking dazed at times like he forgot his next spot. His sluggishness makes Hiroshi Tenzan look like Ricochet. Eric Young, that's quite the comparison. Eric Young makes sense to return to the company, but talk about an underwhelming surprise. I didn't even know it was an elimination match until Trey was eliminated. Then you have Eddie win the title, and the moment is ruined by Madman Fulton, but in a way that got much less heat than when Kenta interrupted Naito this year. The Good Brothers came out and had a stare down, making your new champion Eddie Edwards feel like the 5th most important guy in the ring. He goes on to ask, what are your thoughts on Josh Matthews as a commentator? I absolutely hated him tonight. He feels so phony anytime he tries to emote. For a company that has such a revolving door of talent, I'm surprised Josh Matthews is the guy they choose to put on commentary. Pass or fail grade, Davie, on Josh Matthews?
Hearing him with Don Callis is a darn sight better than listening to him and his wife bicker every Tuesday. So... yeah, whatever. He's part of the furniture, It's like you listen to him for so long. It's like Michael Cole. He's fine. Whatever.
I actually think some of Josh's best work in Impact have been. This is going back a few years when he actually had to call shows solo, and I thought he actually did. Like that's a very Nate, as you could probably attest to, very tough to do solo play-by-play. That I thought he did okay. Like Josh, to me, he's never going to be singled out as the top announcer out there. But I think he's serviceable in the role.
Yeah, I think with Josh Matthews, he is the type of broadcaster that is either going to rise or fall to the level of his partner. And I think him and Callis work really, really well. And this is no disrespect to Madison Rain, but that tandem didn't work quite as well. And so I respect Josh for the hustle. I respect the hard work that this man has put in with this company for all these years. He's never been my favorite play-by-play guy, and he probably never will be, John. Like he comes across at times like great value Michael Cole, and that's not my cup of tea. Like especially when you look over to AEW and you've got Shivani and Jim Ross and Excalibur and Jericho and Taz, doing their thing on commentary. So like Josh isn't terrible. He's gotten better than he was, but I don't think he'll ever kind of get past serviceable as an announcer.
Hey, before we just wrap up here, I failed to mention that this has become a staple on every TNA pay-per-view, Impact pay-per-view, that they plug that the DVD of this event will be on sale on their website. Like, amazing in 2020. Like, I don't know of any companies that promoted DVD on sale, but Impact, to the dying end, will live and die with that technology.
Shout out for the respect for physical media. Because again, John, like, obviously, I am somebody who still has a decent sized DVD collection. And while I appreciate streaming services, that have all these movies available, the thing I miss from the DVD era is actually putting the DVD in the machine and going through the menu and listening to directors' commentaries, which I feel are a lost thing now that, everything is, through digital media. It's not something that people think to do as much as they used to back in the day. So yeah, shout out to Impact for keeping the DVD industry alive.
Big question will be if Bound for Glory, do we see the return of title sponsor Comda.com and Don Callis' hat? Last one here.
As long as Barry Jenkins comes back, I'm good, John.
Last one is Andrew from Cape Breton. I think the show tonight was hampered by people's imaginations. Because of all the potential signings, the fact that more people didn't show up was going to be a big disappointment. This was made worse when Heath Slater's debut was ruined by Fight TV going offline for a bit during his debut. The show, that could actually be like his part of his motivation for the disrespect that he received from Impact coming here. He's kicked out of the building. The feed went down during my debut. I got a shitty microphone. God damn it. The highlight was the return of the machine guns, but again, that ended up hurting the rest of the night because I assumed there would be more returns during the matches. The Knockouts Gauntlet had a lot of potential with returns and debuts, but ended up being the worst match of the night. I also did like Eric Young returning, as he was one of my favorite wrestlers during the Don't Fire Eric run in the late 2000s. He's an excellent wrestler, a benefit for the company, but again, I do wish there were more. Impact may have done too much to promote the show, and it ended up biting them in the ass. 6 out of 10. They over promoted this show is his biggest criticism. And I don't fault any fan that had high expectations. Those teaser videos were designed for that. And they chose to put like a sting and an angle in there beyond just guys from the WWE cuts. So if fans were expecting big, I don't fault them at all.
No, and it's a situation where obviously you have to promote this. You want to get some talk going on, but if you don't have the cards to back it up, then everybody can immediately see that you are bluffing. And it's not shade at Eric Young or the Motor City Machine Guns or the Good Brothers, because these are all talents that can help your roster. But it's not what people were paying $40 for. And I think ultimately you might have hurt yourself in the long run because, I think all of these talents, particularly EC3, are going to pan out for the company. But for the curiosity buys that they may have gotten tonight, those people, much like Brandon, might never come back.
Well, that is going... Yeah. Final thought.
Sorry, no, I was just going to echo the same. I think they probably did well with the promotion for this show, but I can see a lot dropping off for the next.
Yeah, that's going to be the struggle. Like, I think there was this belief that, going to Access TV was going to be this massive increase in exposure. And there's just no evidence of that. I mean, up here in Canada, it's either you watch it on the Fight Network or you find it online. Like, those are kind of your options. And in the States, like, Nate, I know I've asked you this before, but you do get access, correct? Like, that's where you would watch Impact, or do you have to find it other ways?
No, I don't get access in my area, so I usually watch it on Twitch.
Well, there you go. Yeah. Like, that's, it's tough. Like, if it's not readily available, it becomes something where people are, if you give people a easy way to skip a show, it's out of sight, out of mind. So
honestly, if it wasn't for Twitch, the YouTube page, and the Impact Plus, which is a good app, I wouldn't be able to keep up with the product.
Well, that's why we have Davie Portman every Tuesday night at postwrestling.com, recapping Impact if you are not keeping up with it. So let's go through some plugs here from both of you. Starting with yourself, Davie. Always a busy week in the land of Up Next at the BDE, and maybe when Braden makes his way home, you can give him the highs and lows of Slammiversary.
Oh yeah, we'll probably rewatch it right after this. You can find us every Wednesday night on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/upnext, where we do our live post NXT show every Wednesday, and then shortly after uploaded to our free feed on the podcast. Just search Up Next wherever you get your podcasts. We do watch-alongs for pretty much every pay-per-view, AEW, NXT, and now it seems Impact Wrestling as well. So youtube.com/upnext for our watch-alongs. And we have our Patreon, patreon.com/upnext, where we do certain shows like Best Match Ever, where we look back at great rivalries and great match stipulations or pay-per-views. We do our Was Next, where we look back at kind of the Full Sail era, starting from the beginning in 2012 of NXT, and lots of just random movie reviews and non-related wrestling content. And yeah, find me at Davie Portman, follow our Twitter page at Up Next Podcast, and follow the Facebook group Up Next Podcast as well.
Yeah, and you can, both myself and Nate have done episodes of Best Match Ever. I did one on Stan Hansen, and Nate just did one on Mike Awesome and Masato Tanaka, going through their history of matches. So you can check those out. Nate is one of the busiest men out there in the podcast space. Direct the listeners to where they can get more of Nate Milton, because hearing you after an Impact pay-per-view, it's just it doesn't quench the thirst.
No, if people want more, right now they're getting Eric Young Nate, and the people want Sting Nate. And so if you want Sting Nate, you can find me on the various shows and various platforms. Of course, the Kings of Sport, myself and Marcus Vanderberg. You can check us out. We've got a Patreon. So after you put down your money for the post Patreon and the BDE Patreon, slide over to the Kings of Sport Patreon. Myself and Marcus, we've got over 100 hours of content on there, audio, video. We've got a MCU review. We've got a political show, which I'm sure Chris and I will probably touch base sometime in the next week or so.
Now is the time to jump on the Kings of Sport Patreon, because I know that you and Chris, I think, are going to have some fantastic shows over the next few months. That would be my bold prediction.
Chris and I have already, we're already got synchronizing our schedules, because not only do we have to talk about the election and then all the craziness with that, we'll probably, do some type of tribute or some type of show for John Lewis, who just passed away.
Yes, rest in peace.
Yes, a huge figure in the civil rights movement, arguably one of the greatest living Americans who passed away. We'll have to get together to do another episode of the NWA podcast, because if you've been on Twitter at all this weekend, you may have noticed that certain performers of color, have been speaking out. And so, we'll probably touch on that with what's going on with Leo Rush and this movement to appreciate performers like Naomi and Sonny Kiss, who had this big moment on AEW this past week. So that'll be on the Kings of Sport Patreon. Of course, you can check me out here on Post Wrestling with the Rocky Maivia Picture Show. The next episode out will be Fast and Furious 6, as we keep going with that franchise. And joining me for that will be the Joes, Joe Lewandowski and Joe 2 from Too Fast to Forever. So we'll chop that up, and then you'll find that on the post feed. I've got the DC TV podcast, the Black Lightning podcast. We'll probably have another show up before the month's out. I'm on PlayStation Nation's Main Event. I'm on a bunch of different shows. So, I'm wherever I need to be. So you can check me out on Twitter at @8 MOZAIK, at Nate Mosaic on Twitter. And Davie, it's been a pleasure speaking with you again, my friend. And John, thank you. I know we do these Impact shows on the regular, but I appreciate you having me here for the night that changed everybody's lives.
The biggest game-changing night in Impact Wrestling history has come to an end, everybody. How will they follow this up? Do check out all of Nate and Davie's tremendous work, including Davie's watch-along for Extreme Rules, the horror show at Extreme Rules on Sunday night. Enjoy a watch along so you can appreciate the gift of sight, because by the end of the night, someone will not have such a gift. So that will be coming up on Sunday night. Way and I will be going live right after the pay-per-view if you're a double ice cap or espresso member at postwrestlingcafe.com with a review and taking your phone calls. So that is it for us. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. And now we're all going to take a glass and throw it against the wall and stare very, very angry at you.